All right, I'm going to kick this off if it's okay. I'm Danny Seabright, president of the U.S.-UAE Business Council. We are honored today to have friends in the UAE and colleagues in the UAE on the webinar to discuss the status of the UAE as a logistics hub. I welcome everyone to better understand the UAE's growing role as a global hub in this area, and most importantly, how the UAE is innovating for the future. This webinar is part of the Business Council's fall series of Back to Business webinar events. I could not be more delighted to be joined today on the virtual stage by leadership from four tremendously important UAE institutions: DP World, Abu Dhabi Ports, Gulf Tainer, and Etihad Rail. We are pleased to have over 260 registered guests for today's webinar. The webinar will be live and recorded and on the record. Among the guests today, we have representatives from our partners at the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Embassy in Abu Dhabi, and the U.S. Commercial Service in Abu Dhabi. Attendees, please utilize the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen for any questions that you have for our panelists, and I will do my best during the course of the 1 hour webinar to work those questions from the audience into our standard Q&A. I should note again that this session is on the record. We are taping it, and the event will be posted on YouTube at our website soon after the event is over. With that, I'd like to welcome and introduce our first speaker, Mr. Mohammed Al-Muallim, who is the CEO and Managing Director of DP World, UAE region, and the CEO at JAFSA. Jebel Ali Port, operated by DP World, UAE region, is the largest in the Middle East and the flagship facility of DP World's portfolio of over 80 marine and inland terminals across 6 continents. Mr. Al-Muallim has led the growth and development of Jebel Ali Port through a period of major expansion, defining and driving its strategic vision. I should also point out that Mr. Al-Sulaim, the chairman of DP World, is our vice chair of our board of directors at the Business Council. So we could not be more honored to have DP World represented by His Excellency Mr. Al-Muallim today. Mr. Al-Muallim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Greetings from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Thank you for the introduction, and honors is ours to be here. And it's a pleasure being here. Of course, it's part of our engagements, part of our working with the American businesses and how we can really play part together in sense of creating value, bringing opportunities. As you know, that United Arab Emirates, really, it's location-wise, we are fortunate and blessed that we are in the middle of the world almost, where we are connecting the both East and West. And also we have economies around us which are really developing and developing fast, which they require lots of basically everything to sustain and support their economies. And that's why it's very important that we should introduce ourselves in sense of what kind of value we can bring and opportunities to American companies who really can excel from Dubai, as you have said, that between DP World and a port operator and also a supply chain player with the JAFZA, Jebel Ali Free Zone, where we have more than 8,000 companies from all over the world, from the largest to the smallest, who are all in a location where they're connected with what we call regional economies, which we serve around 3 billion consumers around us. And we are really mainly talking about, of course, here, we are very close location-wise to subcontinent of India. We are very close location with Africa. And of course, our own GCC, 6 countries, which we are also developing very fast and building up our economy, and the Central Asia. So taking all that, we are looking at really 3 billion consumers which are being connected from Dubai and United Arab Emirates with fantastic connectivity whether it's by air, by land, by sea. And Dubai continues to build its infrastructure when it comes to transport to really be able to enable everybody in the businesses, whether you're a manufacturer, you're a trader, you're logistics, you're any part of really supply chain and trade, to enable you, to give you that platform so then your business can access new economies and new markets for yourself, where markets are really, as I said, there's a huge demand growing in this region. So in terms of connectivity, of course, when we talk by air, we are connected to all major cities within 5-hour radius from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And by sea, we are connected to 146 direct shipping calls with more than 200 different shipping lines. So that gives you lots of flexibility in terms of really doing your trade in the most efficient way. And of course, in terms of transportation and ground, we already have a fantastic road network, highway network, which connects with the neighboring countries. And now United Arab Emirates embarked on building the freight rail, which the phase 1 is completed. And now phase 2 started, which will connect Abu Dhabi with the rest of, from the border of Saudi Arabia, starting from Abu Dhabi all the way to East Coast and we have the whole UAE covered by network of freight rail as an additional multi-mode. So this is where we really differentiate ourselves than others, and this is where we can play a great role by connecting ourselves with a fantastic infrastructure when it comes to transport and supply chain in terms of moving trade and cargo all over the place around our region. So this is, I just wanted to give you a brief description in a very fast way in terms of what we do. And then later on, I can explore and elaborate further when we go into our session.
Mohammed, thank you very much. And we will unpack some of that, as we say in the logistics business, when we get to the Q&A for sure. Very, very important. I'd like to now introduce Mr. Robert Sutton, who's the head of logistics cluster at Abu Dhabi Ports. Abu Dhabi Ports owns, manages, and operates 11 ports and terminals in the UAE and Guinea. Mr. Sutton is responsible for developing and implementing Abu Dhabi Ports logistics strategy and work with customers and partners to meet their business requirements and develop value and diverse relationships. Mr. Sutton has more than 20 years of experience within the logistics sector across traditional, multimodal, and digital supply chains operating in the MENA region, Asia, and Europe. Bob, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Danny. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. It's my pleasure to be on this webinar with my fellow panelists and obviously the audience. So to build on the introduction there, Abu Dhabi Ports is a key player in this supply chain. We manage and we support our customers globally. The Americas market is one of our key markets also. So if you look at Abu Dhabi Ports as a business, we provide a fully integrated service. We have feeder-in services and also port and hinterland services, which continue to serve our customers across the supply chain. Within the Abu Dhabi Ports, there are 5 business units, one of those being a digital business unit that really makes sure that we're at the forefront of technology and that we're leveraging that technology to the benefit of our customers, of the trade, and of course to the Emirates. Part of our journey goes through acquisitions, and we've recently acquired a company called Miko Logistics. We've brought them under the umbrella of Abu Dhabi Ports. What this does to our business, it provides us with extra strength, extra bandwidth, extra reach and capacity up and down the supply chain. So if you think downstream, upstream, midstream, in those 3 areas, then we now have greater reach, capacity and capability because of the acquisition. Abu Dhabi Ports prides itself on its ability to be able to innovate, to be able to listen to the customer, to understand the customer, and to read the market demand and be able to react to that and respond to that in advance of that demand on occasions. So we see technology, and specifically a subject here that we'd like to discuss, we see technology being at the forefront of change, and we see ourselves very much as a part of that, driving that forward. Of course, the pandemic has thrown up some surprises for all supply chains globally. As Abu Dhabi Ports, we've responded very well to that. We've taken the opportunities where they've come, and we've faced the challenges, as I'm sure many of the participants on this webinar have also done. So we look forward to sharing those. As part of that sharing, we'd like to open and offer the opportunity for you to review our white paper. It was entitled Supply Chain Resilience in 2020 and Beyond. We will make a copy available to the viewers on this panel. And again, I think it's an insightful view on the supply chain and on the position of the Emirates and how we manage the supply chain, and more importantly, how we support our customers globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Much appreciated. And we look forward to talking in the Q&A a little bit about the technology aspects that you mentioned for sure. I'd like to introduce now, if I could, Mr. Charles Menkhorst, who is the CEO of Gulf Tainer, moving from first Dubai to Abu Dhabi and now to Sharjah. Gulf Tainer is the largest privately owned independent port management and logistics company in the world. Based in the Emirate of Sharjah, the company's primary role is to operate the container terminals in Port Khalid and Corfacon on behalf of the Sharjah Port Authority. Gulf Tainer is also involved internationally in Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Lebanon, Pakistan, Iraq, and the United States, where it operates ports in Delaware and in Florida. Mr. Menkhorst is a highly experienced and effective supply chain professional from the Netherlands and joined Gulf Tainer in July of this year. Prior to joining Gulf Tainer, he was Group CEO at the Luxembourg-based Ports Infrastructure Group, Euroports. Sir, the floor is yours, Mr. Menkhorst.
Hey, thank you very much for the introduction. In addition to what my colleagues of Abu Dhabi Ports and DP World have mentioned, of course, we share the same passion and philosophy when it comes down to the UAE. We really see the UAE as a high quality hub connecting the Western world with the Eastern world. The role that we would like to play to clients across the world is by being a trusted maritime supply chain solutions partner. And we try to do that by focusing on a number of core competencies. First of all, a core competency in the operations, the port operations and port management in the form of 8 port terminals across the Gulf and 2 in the US, complemented with a high quality, high density road transportation capability across the Gulf region, where we have a lot of assets on the road to move the goods within our control. And that is further complemented with our supply chain capability, built around 2 large logistics/free zone hubs, one here in Sharjah in the UAE and one in Iraq. We see ourselves and the way we try to differentiate ourselves is through our people and technology. We see them as key enablers of providing our clients with supply chain solutions that really add sustainable value to them.
Thank you very much. We will talk a little bit more about the sustainability and efficiencies in the Q&A for sure. But I'd now like to turn to a little bit of a discussion about how the UAE Railway, Etihad Rail, links with all of the ports and obviously the broader Gulf region. Mr. Shadi Malik, who's the CEO of Etihad Rail, is a dear friend and colleague for many, many, many years. I think we first traveled together in the United States when Etihad Rail was still on the drawing board back in 2010 and 2011 when we were surveying and looking at the way the US rail system worked. Etihad Rail is managing the development, construction, and operation of the UAE's national freight and passenger railway network. The railway network will link the principal centers of population and industry of the UAE and will form a vital part of the planned railway network across the GCC. Shadi began his railway career at Etihad Rail in 2007 and has assumed a number of leadership roles over the last 10 years, successfully developing the strategic model for the company to support the UAE's overall economic development plans. In 2013, Shadi spearheaded the joint venture partnership between Etihad Rail and Deutsche Bahn that led to the establishment of Etihad Rail DB. And in 2018, he oversaw the agreement between the UAE Ministry of Finance and the Abu Dhabi Department of Finance for the financing of stage 2 of the UAE's national railway network. Shadi, it's a real pleasure to see you today. The floor is yours, please.
First of all, good evening and good morning to you, Danny. And I am honestly honored and pleased and humbled to be joining your panel and to meet up with you again. Since also you brought up our trip more than a decade ago to the US when we were still planning the railway, I have to remind you and remind everyone of some good tours that you took us, that one of them still remains in my head when we visited Fort Worth, Dallas, and when we met with the Minister of or the Ministry of Transport of the US. I do remember a very senior official in one of these meetings that said there isn't a city in the US that we know, all of us today, with a strong economy that's not a result of having a strong railway. And that statement remained with me all these years as a motivation and a driver. And the example that you showed us in Fort Worth, Dallas, the dry ports over there, is probably what I personally and we aspire to replicate here in the UAE. So the beautiful thing about the railway is we're not talking about something intangible or something people don't know. As a matter of fact, one of the downsides of working in a railway that everybody who's been on a train once is an expert on railways. So we've constantly need to manage audience and expectations. Etihad Rail, and like any other rail, is ambitions is to be a catalyst for transformation and support the growth and quality of life, something that every railway does, as I mentioned. And we want to support our strong economy in the UAE and our strong ports and logistics centers and industrial zones. Industrialization and trade do require efficient connectivity, and Etihad Rail, specifically in its stage 2, will be its ambitions is to exactly to this. On this panel specifically, we have 3 fine gentlemen from DP World, one of the largest ports in the world. And we have Abu Dhabi Ports, a very ambitious and upcoming and strong port that's establishing its footprint in the region. And we've got Gulf Tanner that's managing the biggest port of the UAE in the East Coast. Etihad Rail will connect all these 3 ports and the logistics zones and will support that connectivity between them and shaping a strategy for the UAE in terms of logistics and connectivity, and will connect all these ports with Saudi Arabia borders and with the east coast of the UAE. Now, we're confident of our success because we did deliver on stage 1 a very important railway that's moving already more than 7 million tons of material on annual basis. If you consider this in the context of the US, it's a small number, but anything you consider in the context of the US is a small number. However, for us in the region, this is a big amount of products that enabled us to learn and be ready for the next phase. So as the industry constantly develops and adjusts its bases, So does the railway. Railway is an old technology, but it has evolved over the last years. And we are lucky here in the UAE, and with the support of our leadership, to be working and developing a state-of-the-art railway that combines several technologies from across the globe, which I suppose we will be discussing more about it during the panel. AR will enable businesses and industries and give them the opportunity to establish themselves and thrive in the future economy as part of our community. And that's only the freight, and the passenger will also have its significant fingerprint on our economy. So I'm very happy to be talking about the railway, and I will transfer back to you because I could spend the next 2 hours talking about Etihad Rail.
But we feel your enthusiasm, Shadi, and we applaud your success. So thank you very, very much for what you're doing. Let's turn to the Q&A if we could. Just a friendly reminder for all attendees to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions, and I'll try to work them into the discussion. I do have a few already that I'm looking at, and I'll be happy to try to get to those. I do want to say we're gonna talk about technologies and efficiencies, but I also want to make sure that we touch on a couple other very, very important and timely topics. The one of China and competition with U.S. companies in the Middle East and in the UAE, and also the opportunity of the new Abraham Accords and cooperation with Israel going forward. And I know that some of the colleagues on the line have actually just signed recent agreements with our friends in Israel as well. So, but first let's go to measuring the quantity and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on your business. And I'll just ask you all to jump in here and say a word about how it affected the container volume. How did it drop because of the pandemic? Have you seen a decrease in port calls? And then I'll also ask you, just if you say a word or so about how any special measures you took to protect your staff and your teams, because obviously our people are the most important asset we have in any business whatsoever. And I'm going to go in the order in which everyone spoke. So Mohammed, you just checked off. Can you speak for a second, or should I go to Bob Sutton?
No, I can speak. I think.
Okay, please, Mohammed, go ahead, please. We just can't see you.
Yeah, you know, in with the pandemic, it's a situation which is really the whole world is experiencing for the first time. We never had any kind of experiences like this that we are facing today. So it has really impacted and disrupted what we call the maritime and logistics industry in a big way. So as a result of that, yes, of course, there was a drop in the trade activity in volumes, which I'm sure everyone has experienced this, purely because I mean, countries went into lockdown and they were less demands are happening from different places. So really, if you looked in terms of numbers, I mean, when we checked our DP World globally, when we looked at our numbers, we saw that in the second quarter, there was a drop of minus 7.9% comparing to the year before, year to year. And also there was a drop of 3.9% in first half of the year in 2020. But really, when we compared it to the whole trade, the world trade, you know, which went to, as per our numbers that we have, it went to the minus 10% in the first half of the year. So in regard to that, we as a DP World in different regions that we exist, we did pretty well in comparison. And that because really that we now have a full solution globally where we have ports, we have free zone economic zones, and we have logistic companies, we have logistic parks, and we have shipping line, and we have at the same time railways in different parts of the world. So really we have developed over the years what we call end-to-end one solution for the trade and for the business happens. So in DP World, we have handled for the first year of 2020, first half year of 2020, we have handled 33.9 million 20 feet equivalent containers, TEU. And in Jebel Ali, in UAE, we have handled 6.7 million TEU in the first half of 2020. In first half of 2020, and that is really shows that in our region where we stayed, it was at least was better in comparison to the world standard. And in terms of challenges, of course, the major challenge was how to remain sustainable and how to move cargo, and especially when it came to essential cargo, such as related to food stuff, in terms of how do we move this. So that was really the major requirement, that how we should remain sustainable and keep the business going and receiving the goods, because economies do depend on ports for bringing in cargo for the people to continue moving forward. And of course, to do that, we have taken certain precautions, and mainly with our people. That was number one priority in that case. That's really what we did. We brought in our people who had to work within our facilities. Say if they have to work in the port, we had to bring them in and provide them accommodation inside the port, their workplace, a secure, safe environment where we tested them regularly. We used cleaning, disinfectant all the time, making sure that even transportation was in such a way that it was safe for them to travel. So the idea was really that we put them into a very protected environment, that they can do their job and come back to their work in a safe way, and this way that business can continue. And we were glad and happy that our performance really did not drop pre-COVID. The performance kept on going. The ships were coming on time, leaving on time, and cargo were being handled and delivered to the warehouses, so they can end up in where they need to end up without really to the minimum disruption. Of course, we worked with our governments, with all the stakeholders, to make sure that our logistics system remained operational, remained effective. So then there is no kind of a negative impact on our markets and business as usual. So this really, Danny, in terms of really what we did when it came to our people. Of course, we took many other precautions as well, but just to give opportunity to my colleagues, this was really what we did.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Why don't we turn to Robert to give a view from Abu Dhabi, and then Charles to give a view from Sharjah real quickly, please.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Danny. So people are our greatest asset. Without people, without the teams, we simply don't function. So one of our priorities from the offset was to make sure that we supported the team, that we had open and transparent communications on their concerns, and that we provided them with safe and secure accommodation, working conditions, and we're able to ensure that we provided the level of protection, the highest level of protection that was possible during the period. So that was a key part of us protecting the supply chain and making sure we've got continuity of service for our customers. Of course, COVID comes with challenges. We've just talked about some of those challenges with Mike, with the previous participant, and we've talked about some of the opportunities. We actually saw more opportunities than challenges. The challenges we could see, and we could address those through very robust business continuity plans. So we're able to react very quickly and proactively to those challenges. And the opportunities, we have a very agile business model, which allows us to pursue the opportunities and to make sure that we leverage the whole of the very diversified Abu Dhabi Ports Group to be able to make the most of those challenges. So yeah, a number of challenges, a number of opportunities, but uppermost in our mind was the protection and continuity of our team's health.
Thank you, Robert. Charles?
Yeah, Danny. If we look to the consolidated results for the Gulf-Tana Group, I think it's fair to say that, of course, we were also impacted like everybody else. The first quarter of the year was the best quarter volume-wise in the history of the company. The second quarter, we saw a consolidated drop of about 10-11% versus the same period last year. But we saw a remarkable recovery in the third quarter. If you compare the third quarter to the second quarter, we saw a 6% increase. So that brings us to a September year-to-date volume of -3% versus the same period in 2019. And if we stand it and we look at it right now, our full year forecast is that we will deliver and handle exactly the same volume as the year 2019. So these are the numbers. If you really dive down into the details, you see a couple of interesting developments. The most interesting one is if you take again the full year forecast in mind. Within that, we see quite a significant drop, especially in the second and third quarter in China and Japan origin cargo, especially the non-essential cargoes like perfumes, like apparel, and these type of products. But that is compensated by essential cargo coming from other origin markets. If we look to what we have done to drive our ambition for a zero harm environment forward, I think it is very much in line with what the other gentlemen have just mentioned. We've taken all the necessary precautionary measures to stop spreading the virus, including protection equipment, testing facilities, etc. That comes at a significant cost, but we believe it is an absolute criticality to do this. As mentioned also by Robert before, our most valuable asset are our employees. So that's definitely a worthwhile investment to make. The only other element I can add to this is that we've worked very closely together with the Sharjah authorities, for example, have brainstormed about, how can we really make sure that critical commodities, especially during the pandemic, like equipment, hospital type equipment, can be processed very quickly. So in close collaboration with the authorities, we've created a number of fast lane procedures so we can really move this critical and essential equipment very quickly through all the customs procedures that we have. So that's in summary what we have been focusing on and what we see from a volume development.
Somehow we got you muted there, Charles. We just missed your last point. If you could unmute yourself and just say that last sentence. Just unmute yourself. Okay, David's going to work on that while I go to Shadi. There you go, Charles. Go ahead. There, yeah. You just came on. Sorry.
No, my closing remark was that is what we have experienced from a volume perspective across our portfolio. And as I started off with, our people are our most important asset. We have our zero harm strategy, and we've taken the necessary precautionary measures to really make sure we can also deliver against the promise.
Thank you so much. Shadi, say a few words about how the pandemic affected Etihad Rail's operations, please. And is your volume down? Is it back up? Your freight, and how you took care of your people, please.
Sure. If you allow me, there is a couple of things that we're doing at Etihad Rail right now. We're moving the 7 million tons that I've talked about, and we are also constructing a 600-kilometer railway. So our operations really is made up of transport and a major construction program. But before I talk about Etihad Rail is effectively owned by the government. And to be fair and to give a lot of credit to the government of the UAE, over the last few years, there has been a massive trend towards digitalization and building a lot of digital infrastructure and transforming a lot of our businesses to digital. Some of it a few years ago might not have been understandable. Now, with the COVID kicking in, I think we found ourselves very prepared to do a lot of our work and our businesses, specifically with international firms, to be able to do everything remotely and work without major human contact. The other thing is the government of the UAE took action very early on. Early in February, you could see when there was still limited numbers of COVID in the UAE, maybe in the 10s or 20s, we started a massive program of testing and tracking in the UAE. I think the UAE has the highest testing per capita, if I'm not mistaken, across the globe. And the government started establishing its business continuity plans and remote working and working with the supply chain. All of this worked very well for us. So if I go more specific for Etihad Rail and for any rail, it has been a great solution for COVID-19 across the globe because rail naturally doesn't have a lot of human contact. And as I mentioned earlier, by us deploying state-of-the-art technology like our signaling system, ETCS level 2, which enables us to control and do the signaling communication and move through locations at all times remotely. Now, if you look at our major customer ADNOC and about the level of digital infrastructure and excellence they have, and with us, effectively what happened during COVID-19, that our punctuality improved from 99% to hit 100% for the first time ever. And we had zero impact on goods transported because of all these measures. From a construction perspective for us, we also, the UAE never did a full lockdown because of its strategy across the construction sector and across for battling COVID. And therefore, Etihad Rail program continued as per the plan and as per the construction. So in all of these fronts, we did very well, obviously, and I won't bore everyone and repeat what all the panel said. Like every company in the UAE, we did social distancing, testing and monitoring, sterilization, and there was solid government regulation. Mohammed might have touched even about transport, using the buses to downsize to 30% of capacity, utilizing the capacity in our offices to less than 30%, catering, food, all dealing with groups of people working together. We had very solid government regulation with this, and we implemented as well an Etihad Rail, our strategy, and the result has been significant. And there is more even interest now with the railway and understanding of its value proposition, because countries such as Germany, for instance, and cross-border kept the railway as the only functioning method of transport cross-border as opposed to trucks.
Shadi, thank you. I want to quickly turn to a conversation about technology, but before I do, just 2 or 3 sentences from you. A number of attendees are asking about the pandemic's impact on your expansion plans and your integration plans with the rest of the region, understanding that other countries have had a very uneven response to COVID in comparison to the UAE. So just a couple quick 3 sentences, what you can say about your plans for the future, for the railway's expansion.
Well, in short, the plans has not changed. We continue as before the pandemic. Early on at the pandemic, we got meetings with our shareholders. They reviewed our plans and they looked at any areas that could need optimization without touching the overall strategy, and they gave us full support, both Abu Dhabi Holding Company and the federal government, that this railway is strategic and it's important to move as per the plan. So in short, we are continuing exactly like we are. Our designs have throughout completely, the designs have been completed, and the progress on the ground is actually now could be seen by any person who's driving across the UAE, as construction is progressing on monthly basis with significant percentages. So there is no change to the plans. And regarding our neighbors, we are in touch. For instance, we have our borders with Oman and Saudi Arabia. As far as we are concerned, we're continuing to build our project all throughout the UAE, border to border, and we understand that our neighbors have no changes to their plans, and hopefully at the scheduled date of connection, we will be connected. The good news is the GCC a few years ago have established interoperability standards. So the same signaling system that we are building and implementing is being implemented in Saudi Arabia. The same locomotive specification we have is the same wagon specification. So we have no deviation on this important and strategic infrastructure.
Thank you, Shadi. Let's talk quickly, if we can, a little bit about technology. And I'm just going to sort of hit a couple, 3 questions and ask people to talk to them. Mohammed Muallim, DP World has been very forward-leaning in investing in new technologies such as blockchain, Hyperloop, innovative container storage systems. Is technology the most important investment that can be made in the global supply chain, especially at this time with COVID? And Mr. Sutton, Abu Dhabi Ports also has invested significantly in technology, and you run a semi-automated port, Khalifa Port. What kind of innovations and technology are needed to help modernize the port system that you operate? And Mr. Menkours, Gulftainer recently launched the Future of Port Startup Challenge to identify startups from across the globe with innovative ideas that can transform the port management and logistics industry. With a view towards technology, can you tell us more about this challenge and what you're hoping to achieve? And we'll go please to Mohammed Muallim first.
Well, I mean, technology has been on our plans from much early. I mean, we're talking about from early 80s. That it's as part of UAE vision to be progressive, to look in technology, to improve things, to do things better. To do more with less, you know, all that. So really, we as a DP World, of course, and within the supply chain and logistics, we have taken upon ourselves that globally, we need to look at in terms of using technology in all aspects. I think my colleague Shadi has made a comment on digital revolution, which we are going through. We are investing lots of time and investment in terms of digital connectivity within our portfolio. As you know, we are in more than 50 countries. So we need to connect all of them together. So then we are connecting all these supply chain dots to make sure that we are able to provide our customers to end with the best transparency, efficiency, and also in terms of really being it fast and benefit to the trade itself, which trade will continue. Of course, on Dubai base, when we come back on Dubai base, we have so many projects which we have initiated, and when actually COVID did hit us, and especially in the month of April when lockdown happened, we were able to do our job remotely. We didn't have actually people, even in operations. Our machines don't have operators. We've been doing it through a very controlled remote control rooms where you had a few operators on the machines. When I say machines, on panels where they can by remote handle a few machines at the same time. So you didn't need physically people to be in operation. So that itself has helped us quite a lot. And as you said also, we are looking at robotics, to use robotics where we can, not only necessary for pandemic, but also for saving people's life in a dangerous area where we know that in port industry, it is a dangerous environment that you need to look after our people. So we are using even robotics in that area that they can handle instead of people. And we also at the same time looking at drone technology in terms of how drone can help us in terms of identifying, reading containers and minimizing the error and making it faster and utilizing the data back into our data center. And these are kind of one of the things that we are doing. We're looking at also, in terms of futuristic projects, which is Hyperloop. Hyperloop is a revolution by itself in transportation. And my colleague Shadi will tell you that, if Hyperloop becomes in future successful, and we are very confident that it will become successful over time, this might be a strong rival to railways today, because basically this we are using a space technology in transportation of cargo and also freight and people when it is all the R&D is done. One of the R&Ds are taking place in Nevada right now in terms of really using the Hyperloop and testing it and bringing it to a place to where we can get more data and more information. We are building vertically. We are building a fully automated stacking yards, what we call high bay or box bay. The idea is that we all in the port industry suffer from space, and especially in certain countries, even space are more critical. So we're looking at technologies where we can really handle thousands of containers without a single person really being involved. It's all done fully automated, vertically up, where you can save time, and it's much faster and no error in that case. And as you said, yes, we are looking at in terms of digital connectivity, in terms of blockchains, using online system. Basically, we want to be a zero paper environment where this helps us into the business going forward and to go forward. Thank you.
I was going to say, Robert and Charles, could you just say a few words from your standpoint about the critical technologies you're focused on for your operations?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So very, very similar to DPW, we also automate across our port activities. But let's be clear, digitalization and automation and the leveraging of technology has been happening for years, and it will continue to happen regardless of COVID. I think what COVID has done, it's been a Kickstarter towards people really choosing innovation as their first choice and leveraging the innovation and technology that's available in the markets today. We prefer to look at although we have operational automation, of course, we prefer to look at how we use data, how we use technology in order to enhance the customer experience and in order to mitigate a lot of the risks which exist within the supply chain. So that's where our focus is. And if you look at Abu Dhabi Ports as an organization, one of the reasons why we have a digital division within the organization, a very focused and large digital division, is because of the dependency on making sure that companies use the best technology, use the appropriate technology, and get the best benefits from it, lies very much with the port companies and the logistics companies.
Thank you. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. As you mentioned in your introduction, we have started a group-wide initiative called Project Glide, which stands for the Gulf Container Leadership Initiative for Digital Excellence. And we have taken a somewhat different approach from many other companies. Instead of investing very heavily in developing new technologies ourselves, we actually opened up our doors and we invited many entrepreneurs and innovators around the world to join us in our ambition to develop services and solutions that really deliver tangible results for our clients and ourselves. And we have initiated that project Glide earlier this year, focusing on 5 key areas: Internet of Things and robotics, artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, blockchain. But we also didn't want to limit the entrepreneurs and the innovators in their ambition. So we have also created one category called Bring It Yourself. So we really inviting the entrepreneurial world, to share their ideas with us, and together we can really drive the digitalization of our company. In the end, only with one objective, and that is to really make sure we can deliver a better service and really help our clients to create a sustainable competitive advantage to them.
Thank you, Charles. The Business Council just published a report this morning called Smart Mobility. And David's just going to throw up the cover sheet of it really quickly while I introduce the topic of China, if I may. The Smart Mobility report just highlights some areas that U.S. companies are involved in smart technologies in the UAE today. I'd like to have a little bit of a conversation, if I could, just a few minutes left that we have about China. American companies are competing strongly with China in the UAE. It's a source of increasing friction. Kim Schoenfeld has mentioned on the chat function that the Chinese have introduced certain inspections related to COVID on their ports that are causing major delays. And just in general, what could you say to U.S. industry about how to be more, and Shadi, I'm going to throw this question to you too, how to be more competitive with the Chinese going forward as it relates to the UAE marketplace? Obviously the UAE is situated between East and West, and the trade flows go both ways. And I'm not talking about doing less trade with China. I'm just talking about any thoughts that you have on how U.S. companies can be more competitive with the Chinese in the UAE market going forward. And whoever wants to take a stab at answering or saying a point or two about that, I'd appreciate it.
I'm happy to, it's to try to thread through that answer. But let me just put it this way. We've just concluded a major procurement, multi-billion-dollar construction project. As a procurement, and it's under construction, what we are doing right now. And in that project, we've got Chinese companies that competed with the US companies on certain contracts, which the US companies won. And there are contracts that they competed with each other, and the Chinese companies won. If I may say, the first thing I would say to the American companies, we should not always start with this psychological disadvantage that, oh, if there is a Chinese competitor, we're not going to win. And for instance, in Etihad Rail, for the locomotives, EMD have won the bid, and they have submitted a better price and an excellent technical submission. So if you even look back at the technology discussion that you were having, EMD is an extremely great state-of-the-art company that has great technologies and great innovation that are required by the UAE. And when evaluation, and I can tell you, I'm pretty sure this is the case across all UAE-owned companies, and Mohammed can confirm this, we look for two things: a strong technical bid, and secondary to the strong technical bid, a good price. So when you are in a competition, and most of us have either a 70-30 formula or a 60-40 formula, meaning technical has at least 60% weighting. So if you have a strong bid and you do your homework well and bid for it, not necessarily you will lose even on price, because the Chinese companies of today are not the same ones from 20 years ago where they would submit a very cheap price because they just want to win the job. No, they want to submit a good bid, and they do submit a price for that good bid. So what I would say is the most dangerous things and if I was talking to myself, for American companies to go online, look, if we have a Chinese competitor, that means we're never going to win. Untrue, and at least from an Etihad Rail perspective, the companies such as EMD managed to go into the bid and submit a cheaper price and a good, and as good, if not better, quality product than the competitor. On the wagons, for instance, we had the Chinese guys learning from stage one, submitting an excellent technical bid and a good price as well. So the price factor does make some difference, but not all the difference. And it doesn't mean by default any longer that you have a Chinese company, these guys are gonna have a cheaper price. South Korean companies started the same way. They used to have cheaper prices, and now they're as expensive as European American firms, and Chinese are getting there at the same time. And just to close with this, we always enjoy to be a bridge between the East and the West. And in Etihad Rail Stage 1, we have American locomotives working with Chinese wagons under the umbrella of European signaling system. So there is a way for all of us to have a piece of the cake.
Danny, can I comment as well?
Just a real quick one, Mohammed, because I want to get the other two guys. Go ahead, please.
I mean, I agree with what Shadi said, but what I will say to American companies or in China, I think pandemic has shown that you are vulnerable economically, you are vulnerable in terms of your supplies. So I think being in Dubai, where we can, and UAE, we can give you the full multi-mode supply, and you can be in Jafza with the rest 8,000 companies over there. You can produce and you can sell. And plus we open new markets for you, Africa and India, where we are based very well on the ground.
Thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for the question. So from Abu Dhabi Port's perspective, we have a very open and transparent tender process anyway. We don't focus on nationality, we don't focus on country of origin. We focus on value, we focus on value creation, both for us, for the United Arab Emirates, and also for our customers. So for us, it's about proficiency, quality, and cost. We see very competitive bids coming from the US, and we see very competitive bids coming from China. All of them are measured on the same merit.
Thank you. Charles?
Yeah, Danny, I guess I need to go back to the time when I lived and worked with my family in San Francisco. And I remember that I was very impressed with a couple of things that I believe America stood out in, and its entrepreneurial drive, its creativity, its flexibility. And I really believe that these are unique strengths that you can find in the US. So from that point of view, I'm not surprised that if I look to the companies we are now shortlisting for our Project Glide, our digital transformation projects, that many of those entrepreneurs and innovators are actually US-based companies. And I'm convinced, if they continue to focus on these strengths I just mentioned, that we will set up long-term collaboration partnerships with many of those American companies.
Thank you, Charles. Mohammed, we have 2 minutes left, and I want to end on just 30 seconds or 45 seconds, if I could, on what DP World has done with Israel under the historic Abraham Accords. This is a really, really important step forward, and U.S.-Israel UAE cooperation going forward. Can you just give us 30 seconds at a high level from your standpoint on the future of logistics with Israel and the Gulf?
Yes, of course. We have been very active with Israelis at different levels, and very quickly we are already in discussion to look at whether we can do some business together in Haifa port. We are looking at a shipbuilding in Israel, a joint venture together. We also signed, we're looking at a free zone in Israel as well. So talks are going on right now, and we also had a conference call or meeting with the Federal Chamber of Commerce of Israel, where we introduced to introduce companies and what we can do for them. And I'm glad to say that already transactions are taking place. And as you know, that even on UAE level now, we have also agreements between the banks. So financial transactions can also take place. So this is in a very quick way. And there are many, many things are going on right now, which it will take more time. But we are fully engaged. We are very quick and fast to get in, and also really to have a collaboration at different levels with different industries and how we can best serve them in this region.
Thank you, Mohammed. Shadi, you're going to get the last note. I'm going to ask you to look forward in a very positive way. Do you think there's a time, a day in our lifetime that we will see the rail connection from the UAE through Saudi Arabia, through Jordan to Israel?
Absolutely. I don't think that's a distant dream, because it's a very simple proposition. Saudi Arabia does have 2,400 kilometers that span from the Jordanian borders to Dammam. We are 300 kilometers away from Saudi Arabia, which is under construction. And then, from Jordan to Israel, both countries have a peace treaty. It could be sooner than many people think it is.
Well, as we say, inshallah, thank you so much. That brings us to the end of today's session. Thanks to all of our esteemed panelists and to all the attendees for joining us today. Join us tomorrow, if you will, for a webinar with Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Arabian Gulf Affairs, Tim Lenderking, who just visited the Gulf, and he's going to talk about what's next in the region. Gentlemen, everyone on the call, please stay safe. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, Danny.